This is the GoPro Hero 12, and this is the iPhone 15 Pro. Should you invest in an action camera like this, or spend the extra money and pick up a camera like this that has a flashlight and a GPS? Considering that you could purchase 3 GoPros and a flip phone for the price of one iPhone 15 Pro, it prompts us to contemplate whether or not the investment is truly justified. To address this, we need to thoroughly examine their differences from the perspective of a beginner. I'm not interested in the specs provided by the companies that manufactured these devices. I'm interested in evaluating the real-world performance of both of these cameras for various use case applications. That's why I'm approaching this comparison through the eyes of a beginner, someone who is not well versed in content creation and may be unsure of where to begin. These are 2 different cameras designed for different people. I'm here to help you navigate through their uses to figure out which camera is best for you. Both cameras were released in the same month and the same year, so they've been on the market for the same amount of time. I own both cameras, and this video is not being sponsored by anyone. If you haven't had the opportunity to use either of these cameras and are interested in understanding how their video file sizes and clips will perform in your editing rigs, I've uploaded some project files for you to download at no cost. This will allow you to review the footage comparisons without it being affected by YouTube's compression. I'll leave a link to that footage in the description. If you own or plan to purchase the GoPro Hero 12, I created a Film 101 course covering the various aspects, including shooting in diverse lighting environments and configuring the GoPro to achieve cinematic shots. You can find that course in the description as well. Today, we are going to cover a wide range of topics from usability to image quality. We will look at how long it takes before either one of these cameras overheats in 4K 60 when continuously recording. We're going to see how fast their batteries drain and what their media burn looks like. We will compare their similarities and differences, look at their image quality in a variety of different lighting conditions, including low light. We will take a look at their autofocus capabilities, their stabilization while walking with the camera. We're going to frame up that vlog shot and listen to their native audio tests. We'll discuss which camera is for whom, and I'll share side-by-side videos all along the way. The GoPro Hero 12 has a 27 megapixel sensor, and it can shoot in 10-bit 5.3K up to 60 frames per second, and 4K up to 120. It can shoot in log, and it weighs 5.4 ounces. It comes with a fixed lens and multiple focal lengths. It has mind-blowing stabilization and starts at $299 US, and it was released in September of 2023. The iPhone 15 Pro has a 48 megapixel sensor that can shoot in 4K up to 60. It can shoot in ProRes log and weighs 6.60 ounces. It comes with a fixed lens and has multiple focal lengths. It has mind-blowing stabilization as well, and it starts at $999 US, and it was also released in September of 2023. Okay, the stage is set and we are ready to go. And that's what we will be covering today on the Film Alliance. If by the end of this video, you're still undecided about which one of these 2 cameras is right for you, I made a free camera quiz that may get you on the right track, and I will leave that quiz in the description. Let's talk about their bodies. Both bodies have different designs and ways of holding the camera. The GoPro is smaller than the iPhone, but a security guard probably won't come up to you and tell you not to film if you're filming with the iPhone. This is important to know because about a month ago, I was filming with a particular camera in a crowded environment when a security guard came up to me and told me that I couldn't film on their property. Can you guess which one of these 2 cameras I had in my hand? The GoPro. I've never been confronted filming with the iPhone since I've had it because everybody has a phone and filming with it shouldn't draw that much attention. So the iPhone would be way more inconspicuous. I mentioned at the beginning of this video that the iPhone 15 Pro weighs more than the GoPro, but it does have a slimmer body, which means it will fit in your pocket better. And I happen to think that the glass is more durable. I've dropped the iPhone several times since owning it, and so far, so good. No front protector or anything. The GoPro, however, did develop a crack on the back glass the first week of owning it, and I did not drop it, so That was weird. Since then, I'll tell everyone who takes my course to pick up a case to protect your GoPro from dropping and breaking either the display or the front camera lens. I do own a camera case for the iPhone 15 Pro, but it doesn't protect the front glass, and it only has a cover to go over my cameras when I'm not using it. So I would recommend picking up cases for both of these cameras. Just know that when you start putting cases on either of these cameras, that's gonna make them bigger, bulkier, heavier, and they'll overheat faster. The GoPro has 2 displays on the front and the back, so you really wanna protect it. And speaking about that, using the front display on the GoPro was super helpful, not only for doing vlog type shots where I could see myself and see what the frame looked like. It was also nice when I had the GoPro in hard to reach spots. Like if I was doing an overhead shot and it was over like this and I wouldn't be able to see the top screen, I could look down and see what was going on. Just make sure that if you are using this front screen, you're intentional about using it, because if you forget that it's on, your battery will drain a lot faster. The iPhone, however, only has a rear-facing screen, especially if you want to use the native camera, which is on the back, where you will get the best image quality. So if I'm in a hard to reach spot with the iPhone, like that overhead shot that I talked about earlier, I wouldn't be able to see the display unless I had a mirror. Now I could use the camera on this side of the iPhone so that I could see the display, but the image quality won't be as good. Another thing to remember is the GoPro has removable storage, and the iPhone, you're stuck with the storage that's within your phone. You can purchase larger storage for the iPhone, but that's gonna get up there incrementally in cost and raise the price. Also, the GoPro has removable power, so you can buy a ton of GoPro batteries for pretty cheap and continue to swap them in and out, where the iPhone has a fixed battery and you're stuck with whatever you have left unless you have a power bank. Another big difference which makes me lean towards picking up the iPhone 15 Pro is the display. It's much bigger than the GoPro's display, and that makes it good for a few different situations you might find yourself in. When you're framing up your shot, or for playback. The playback experience is way better on the iPhone because not only is the display bigger, but you can zoom in during playback to ensure that you nailed focus. When you're using both cameras' playback functions, you can scrub along a timeline through the longer videos to see certain spots in the video faster. With the GoPro, you can actually mark the good spots with a marker icon, whereas with the iPhone 15 Pro, you'll only be able to play back and click the little heart in the bottom of the screen, which will put that clip into a favorites album, but it doesn't give you the option for a specific point in time in that video to save. You cannot pause the video while you're recording with either of these cameras, which is something I know some people have been asking for a while, so that's why it's worth mentioning. The GoPro does have a quarter mount thread on the bottom for things like gimbals and tripods, whereas with the iPhone you would have to get an adapter, something that grabs onto the iPhone that has a quarter mount thread, so it's not as easy to use tripods and gimbals with the iPhone. I do notice that I get the best results with both of these cameras when I'm either shooting video or photo by underexposing or turning the exposure compensation to -1.0. You can do this with both cameras natively, so you don't need to download a third-party app like the Blackmagic Camera app for the iPhone 15 Pro. But that does bring up another great point. You can manually expose, for the most part, with the GoPro in video mode, whereas with the iPhone 15 Pro, you would have to download an app like the Blackmagic Camera app to have more control over your exposure settings. So if you didn't want to download any apps and you wanted to manually expose, then go with the GoPro. Whereas if you're good with straight out of the box and just underexposing by one stop, then go with the iPhone. The GoPro is 100% waterproof unless you don't have the battery door closed all the way, and as long as you don't dive below 33 feet. The iPhone is not marketed as waterproof, and Apple hasn't officially said that it is, but I have definitely gotten it pretty wet and fully submerged other iPhones that I've had in the past in water, and they still work. With that said, if it's raining out or you find yourself in a wet environment, I would pull out the GoPro. The iPhone can shoot in ProRes log, and the GoPro has log. I know a lot of people hate on GoPro's log, but I was pretty surprised on how good I could get this shot to look inside of the church. There was a pretty substantial difference in dynamic range when I went to color grade both of these cameras, but I still have to say the GoPro did fairly well. These church shots are 2 clips that I left in the project files in case you want to download them and try to color grade them yourself. With that said, if you are a log shooter, I would go with the iPhone because you can really get that footage to look good if you have an editor that can handle that ProRes footage. But be aware that your file sizes will be much bigger than your log footage file sizes out of the GoPro. Pretty much through this entire shoot, unless I marked it differently, I shot in both cameras 4K 60, so I would have the option to slow them down by 40% in post-production. You can see with this nature shot that the iPhone has a more sharper image, which also comes off as digital, and the GoPro looks more filmic to me. The GoPro has different framing modes, and you have the ability to shoot in the horizontal orientation 16:9, like the way that this video right here is being filmed, the vertical orientation 9:16, or what you would use for social media, and the full aspect ratio 8:7, which uses the entire area of the sensor on the GoPro. The iPhone can shoot in 16:9 and 9:16 or vertical. There are a ton of different zooming modes with the iPhone, which makes it better if you want to have further reach with your shots, and it jumps from different lens to different lens as you zoom in or zoom out. But I noticed that there are thresholds that when you cross while you're zooming, the image quality starts to diminish. For the highest quality out of both cameras, I would say leave them using their native lenses without any zooming. You can shoot in vertical with the GoPro while you're still holding it horizontal, which is nice because it has a quarter mount thread on the bottom. So if you're into social media, you'll be able to shoot vertical video while your GoPro is sitting on a tripod like this. I used both cameras in a green screen setting, and they both performed great. I didn't notice too much of a difference between both shots after I keyed out the frame, other than the iPhone seemed to cast a blue hue to the black lens, as you can see here. My guess would be that its auto white balance was off in that controlled lighting environment. I could and would use either of these cameras for doing green screen work, and I would just take my white balance down in post-production to remove that blue hue from the iPhone. If you are, however, gonna do some green screen work, make sure to turn the GoPro's bit depth to high and bit rate to 10-bit, so it maximizes the image quality out of the GoPro for your best looking image. I also used both cameras in an overhead product shot as if they were my only cameras that I owned. I wanted to see if there was a big difference between the images, and the only thing that I could really tell a difference in this product overhead shot was the actual focal length. You can see in the outside of the frame, we have a little bit of warping going on with the GoPro, whereas the iPhone gives me that nice linear shot. Now, when I switched the GoPro over to super wide, it really distorts the image, and I think that you would only use hyperview for very specific situations. But I could easily see myself using either of these cameras as an overhead camera to get product shots. Also, with this product shot of the bunny, the iPhone looks way sharper and appears to have more contrast, where the GoPro tends to have a softer and more pastel looking color base. I didn't color grade either of these clips, and I shot with both cameras in program auto for the majority of my filming and turned sharpness to low on the GoPro. I also turned the color profile to flat on the GoPro so I could bring back the colors myself in post-production. The project files I included for download will have that flat look out of the GoPro so that you can play around with some of those shots as well. I did notice that when I was shooting these raining scenes in 1080-240, the iPhone tended to be a little bit sharper, but both of them did not look fantastic, and I would be careful about using 1080-240 in anything other than a well-lit environment. I wouldn't even use 1080-240 if it was overcast out. I'd say that's just one frame rate and resolution we are not going to use with either camera. The images become very noisy and start to fall apart. Thankfully for the GoPro, you can shoot in 2.7K up to 240 frames per second. And when I was shooting in that resolution and frame rate, I was seeing a lot better of an image than I was with the 1080-240 out of the iPhone. So if you are a 240 shooter, then I would go with the GoPro because of its 2.7K resolution. When it came to testing out both cameras' color profiles, I liked the way that the GoPro's colors looked better straight out of camera, especially when I was in a lit environment. It had a more naturalistic type of look, and the iPhone to me looked a little bit more digital to my eyes. It's kind of funny because when I compared the Osmo Pocket 3 to the GoPro in my last video, I was thinking that the GoPro had a little bit more of a digital look than the Osmo Pocket 3. So it goes to show when you compare two different cameras, you start to see different things and how they look compared to each other. But look at this color board shot. Look at all the noise coming out of the GoPro when shooting in program auto. This surprised me because I thought when both cameras were in program auto exposure in a low light environment, they'd probably produce the same amount of noise. But in this case, in program auto, in a low light environment, the GoPro definitely produced more noise than the iPhone 15 Pro. Let's talk about the temperatures in media and the battery drain. For these tests, I kept both cameras in ambient room temperature, which was 76 degrees when I first started off. I turned the front-facing screen off of the GoPro, and I shot in program auto exposure in 4K resolution and 60 frames per second on both cameras. You can really start to see a difference even at the 10-minute mark. The GoPro heated up 6 degrees hotter than the iPhone 15 Pro. At the 20-minute mark, we were at 24 degrees hotter with the GoPro, and eventually the GoPro shut down at the 31-minute mark. This is something that I would be aware of, especially if you're planning on doing longer takes with the GoPro, or if you're a live streamer or you want to do a longer interview headshot type of setup. Another thing to remember is that the protective case on the GoPro will probably take those times down even further because the heat wouldn't be able to dissipate as fast as it needs. Up until now, since owning the 15 Pro, it has never overheated on me, but I've never used it for longer take videos. In fact, I wouldn't use the GoPro for longer take videos either, but I wanted to test this out so you had a good idea on how hot they get after a certain amount of time of recording. The next one down was our battery exhaust tests. We used 53% of our battery with that 31-minute shot clip with the GoPro Hero 12 compared to only using 18% with the 15 Pro. That's a pretty substantial difference, but an even bigger difference is the time that it took to charge both cameras from 0 to 100%. The GoPro takes over 3 hours to charge, whereas the iPhone is just over an hour, and that's charging from 0 to 100%. When we jump down into the media storage use tests, I set both cameras up to shoot in 4K 60, and for that 31-minute clip, the GoPro burned up 28 gigabytes of storage, and the iPhone 15 Pro burned up 7 gigabytes. If you're more into taking up less media storage space in both the camera and afterwards when you want to save your footage to hard drives, then the iPhone 15 Pro would be your choice. Both cameras have different options for its digital electronic stabilization. The GoPro has off, hyper stabilization, and auto boost, and the iPhone has regular in-body digital stabilization that you can't turn on or off, and then it even has a better stabilization called action mode. With the GoPro, hyper smooth is generally good enough, and I didn't really ever see a time where I needed to use auto boost. Plus, auto boost will drain the battery faster, but it will give more stabilization than hyper smooth. Action mode on the iPhone will give it better stabilization, but it does tell you that you need more light to get those shots, and it does. When I use both of these cameras with their stabilization on in low light, I was getting some pretty nasty, jittery looks. In both cameras, stabilization is not a friend with low light. Here's our vlog and audio test with the GoPro Hero 12. It's kind of windy out here, but I don't have any wind muffs on the microphone, so you're gonna probably hear some puffs, but it's a good idea to see what it sounds like in a real world situation when you are just pulling it out of your bag and you wanna do a little vlogging with it and you don't have any accessories or wind muffs to protect it from that wind. All right, here's the iPhone 15 Pro's audio and vlog look. Right now I didn't change it to wide or anything like that, so this is the framing that you're gonna get. Also, it's pretty windy out here, so you're gonna get a nasty wind sound in that microphone. I'm using the rear-facing camera on the iPhone to get the most quality. I want to see what the real difference is between that and the GoPro. Both cameras don't perform very well in low light if you open them up out of their box and you just go out and start shooting with them. If you download the Blackmagic camera app for the iPhone, you'll be able to get some pretty good low light shots and shoot in ProRes log. There are certain custom presets that I have set in place, which gives me some really nice looking low light shots. In my course, I talk about how we don't want to raise the ISO above 800 because the low light shots will start to get very noisy. For those of you who don't know what ISO is, when you increase a camera's ISO setting, the sensor becomes more sensitive to light, resulting in a brighter image. However, this increased sensitivity also leads to more electronic noise in the image, and it appears as random variations in brightness and color, which can degrade the overall image quality. So in other words, the higher the ISO setting, the more pronounced the noise becomes. So you don't want to venture above ISO 800 with your GoPro. Check out this shot in the church when I turned Hypersmooth on within the GoPro. When you turn Hypersmooth on in low light situations with the GoPro, it can be less effective because it relies on software processing to compensate for the camera shake. In low light conditions, the camera may need to use a slower shutter speed to capture enough light, which can exacerbate that motion blur. Like I mentioned above, I did underexpose both cameras by -1.0 in the exposure compensation, so I didn't have any blown out skies. So I recommend turning Hypersmooth off if you're hand holding and walking with the GoPro in low light situations. And for the iPhone, if you're in a low light situation, I would recommend picking up a gimbal. Like I mentioned above, I did underexpose both cameras by -1 when I was outside shooting, so I didn't have any blown out skies. I like looking at the colors of the skies to really get a contrast between the two cameras. This shot right here, you can really see the difference in colors when you look at the skies, and this shot of the church. Look at how the hues of the skies change between both cameras. That's something important to remember if you're an outside shooter and you shoot in all different types of environments. If you were to say to me, Joe, I need an action camera like this and a phone like this, then I would say both of these devices I would highly recommend to you. When I was shooting straight out of box with both cameras, I noticed that their color science matched up pretty well compared to other camera manufacturers that I have compared in the past. I think that's something very important to think about. If you have two different cameras from two different manufacturers, make sure their color science matches up pretty well, because you don't want complete differences in colors between your clips. I'm also of the mindset that I think it's always great to have an action camera inside of your bag, because you never know when you might need it. The GoPro is an amazing camera because of its resolution, its frame rate, and the fact that it's waterproof. The iPhone 15 Pro is also an amazing device for capturing video and photography. It's awesome to have such a powerful camera wherever I go, not only to do things like cinematic video, but also family videos and behind the scenes, and just overall having it as an awesome camera. So that's my comparison on both of these cameras, and I hope we were able to sift through all of the information so you know which camera is best for you. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you own the GoPro Hero 12, check out my course because I'm confident it will take your skills to the next level. Thanks for watching. I'm Joe with the Film Alliance. Have a nice week.